All right, so you guys heard about it, right? Project 2025. Also, you heard about the executive order from Trump and his administration to force the homeless into treatment and to annihilate encampments. Well, guess what? I do not agree with forcing the homeless into treatment, but I do agree with annihilating the encampments. And I got some solutions, honey. You may want to stay tuned because this one gonna be good. TCLN Network is here to educate, to take us from situations to the solutions. Let's get right into it, you guys.
Never stop, forget it if I want it. Gotta make to myself a promise. I won't quit, keep going till I got it. I won't give up till I'm on top. Yo, no, I ain't the type to give up. If I do something, man, I do it till I get what I want. I turn a business out of nothing into something. Now we ain't out here moving rocks, we out here moving boulders. Now we ain't getting posterized, we out here making posters. And we ain't got nothing to hide, we move forward like soldiers. Never stop, forget it if I want it. Gotta make to myself a promise. I won't quit, keep going till I got it. I won't give up till I'm on top, yeah. You know I'm always
Welcome back to TCLN Network, where insight meets analysis and conversation spark transformation. I am IBK, and I take news from trending mainstream and I bring it to us so that we can educate to elevate and take us from situations to solutions. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is forcing the homeless into treatment. Now, this is nothing new, guys. I got to remind you. I got to remind you because you think it's just all about the homeless on the streets. You're sadly mistaken. Let's go there and let's talk about it. So remember when a lot of Black people were in these shelters with their children, they were going through and all of these things, right? You do remember that, right? Lots of women that were in these shelters with their children, men who were sleeping in their cars, trying to find work. Now, I know that they will make you think that it's just about these people that are on the streets. I know that they will make you think it's just about those people who mumble to themselves and they don't want no help and all that kind of stuff. Guys, understand what really goes on. So, just in case you've never heard of it before, what I am talking about is they would force Black women and their children and Black men to get on medications in order to get a place to stay. Nothing was wrong with folks. They just was out of job and they were just out of income and they needed a place to stay. Now, I don't know if you remember that time. It was the early 2000s, late 90s, and early 2000s, or mid 2000s also. Now, remember all the shelters from Dallas Family Gateway to all these different programs across Texas, all these different programs across America. Now, remember, they disguised it as the program. Get on the program and you can get some help. Now, to the public, the program would mean like mental health services, medical services, making sure that you're okay and everything's up to par. You got your checkup. That's what it would appear to look like, right? Also, to the public, it would appear to look like that you're going through transitions. And what you can do is you can go through all these phases, get your education, get your Medicaid, get all this stuff. But did you not know that the majority of that was not happening? Actually, what was happening is they were putting Black mothers, and also Black mothers were labeling their children through desperation as having a problem so they could get Social Security so that they could survive. Oh, let's go there, y'all. Let's go there. Because we know that there are certain men that have been through stuff and certain women, and yes, they live on the streets, and yes, these things go on. You know my story. You know I don't sugarcoat my story. I don't hide it, and I don't hide my experience. I've been up here plenty of times, right? But there's another thing I want to show you. Let's talk about our vets. I'm going to show you just how much it is a sham. Because we need to address this. This is called the United States of America. It's called the land of the free. This is called the home of the brave. Well, baby, let's get brave. Now, let's talk about the homeless vets. I want to point out something to you. Number one, women do not go to war in fields. Sometimes they volunteer themselves to go on the battlefields, medical aids, nurse, all that kind of stuff. But predominantly women are not, and you know this. Women are not made to go to war. So that knocks out the majority of women. You would do your research. How many men we have versus how many women we have versus men? Okay, we're talking about America. Let's not talk about other countries. Let's talk about America. So when we're looking at America, we will look at all the people that exist in America, all the millions of people, right? So women excluded, right? Automatically knocked out. Now let's look at babies and children. They don't go to war, right? We got millions of babies and children. They don't go to war, right? That knocks them out. Now let's look at men. The majority of men do not go to war in the United States of America. Most men who go to war, they send them to war or they want to go to war, right? Now, what do you have left after you knock all of that population out? You have this many people, not all these people, but this many people that you would call veterans. Do you understand that? That's what you have left, guys. That many people that you would call veterans. Now, I want you to pay attention. The majority of those people go home to their families, right? Like when people get out the military, they go home to their families, or, they go get their apartments, use their stipends, all of that. So you only have a select few that are really homeless vets. Now, another thing I want you to pay attention to, since the 1980s, because I was an 80s baby, how many 80 babies up in here? Put it in the comments below. Gotta let your motorcycle guys go by. But put it in your comments below. How many 80 babies we got up in here? Now, if you know that you was an 80 babies and you watch the news called CNN, ABC, NBC, all of your local channels, right? Because cable wasn't popping that much back then. We just had what you call the box TV. You understand what I'm saying? Most of it was black and white, shifting into color. You understand what I'm saying? And you had your little box radios, right? So you know that if you was an 80s baby, we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have none of that. We had pay phones, boo. You put that little 10 cents in, ding, ding, went up to 25, then went up to 50 cents. You know about the pay phones, right? So now, you know that since the 80s, they've been talking about homeless vets, correct? They give when you go to voting and when you go to think about voting, they say the same thing over and over and over. We got to take care of our homeless vets. We got to take care of our homeless vets. Come on, guys. It is 2025. They are still saying the same thing. You know how the older people used to say I was born, but I wasn't born yesterday? You trying to pull a wool over my eyes.
Never stop, forget it if I want it. Gotta make to myself a promise. I won't quit, keep going till I got it. I won't give up till I'm on top. Yeah.
Now let's calculate this thing right. I've already pointed out to you that the majority of Americans don't even go to war. So that knocks out everybody, right? When we're talking about homeless vets. And then I've already pointed out to you that people who go into the military, the majority of them go back home to their families, or they use their money, they get out of the military, get them a place. So then you have a select few that go through what they call this homeless situation, right? I pointed that out. You mean to tell me that the American government has eminent domain and all kind of powers of real estate, and we got all this empty land, boo, not just empty buildings, but empty land in the United States of America. Our investors sew up these properties like they pancakes on hotcakes. You know, back in the day when they built properties, it took them years to do the mastery of masonry. I mean, they would design and it took them years. Now they slapstick these buildings up. And they get a government, they get what they call a tax break from the government. Do you understand that? So they get 5 to 10, anywhere from 3 to 5 to 10 years. I know because I worked in property management and I worked in what's called LITCH, which is low income tax credit. So they get a stipend, these investors in these companies, to say, okay, if you build this, you'll give a percentage of low income to people who can't afford rents. Maybe that's like what? Anywhere from like 5% to a certain percentage. The rest of them you pay in regular rents. So you mean to tell me People that you claim you care about, people that you claim that fought for this country, all this empty land. You couldn't go talk to the rich man and say, yeah, but I know you got a lot of land, but we need some help out here. Because if it wasn't for these people out here fighting these battles for you, you wouldn't get to enjoy your land in the first place. Can we please make a deal with you? Get some of this land and make sure our homeless vets are taken care of. Not throwing them in institutions, not throwing them in treatment centers, but helping them. Because after all, if we wouldn't have never sent them to war, they wouldn't be half crazy no way. Wait a minute, on battles that they fought that never saved the day in the first place, because we're still going through the same situations in the United States of America. I want you to think about that now. Hi there, I'm IBK. Welcome to the Creative Leadership Network, known as TCLN, where education is the specialty and solutions are the art. I brought this broadcast together so that we can rise above social, systemic, and spiritual issues that we face every day in our nation. The goal is to help us to do better, get better, and become better. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell. Make sure that your phone notifications are turned on so that you will not forget to be inspired and to stay informed. Okay, now that we got all that out the way, you would say, well, IBK, there are people that's working. There are people that's doing this. There are people that's doing that. Yeah. Did you look at your research, to look at the research pew and to look at the government website to see how many millions of Americans that were so-called out of work? You guys, I did a video on that in October. I think it was around about October. So did you guys see that? The so-called millions of Americans that were out of work. Now, because it was around about the time that Trump was talking about black jobs, right? And everybody was making a mockery about these black jobs, right? So I made a video about black jobs and what he was really saying versus what people wanted to make it look like he was saying. Because what they wanted to make it look like is that he was talking about you go work in the slave factory, when basically he was talking about contracts. So, you know, guys, everything is wrapped up in contracts. Everything they do is in an initiative, is in a contract. They don't just hand you money. Even when they do reparations or they do like institutional stuff, like say for instance, blacks been talking about reparations for years, right? The truth is blacks was given a lot of money. They just didn't do right by it. They didn't disperse it right. They chose what they wanted, did what they wanted to do. It's like mismanagement, right? So lots of this money was given to lots of these organizations. They don't give it like, okay, here go the money. They give it in the form of initiatives and contracts and deals and all that kind of stuff. And then they're responsible, and people, that's just like the Jews. When the Jews go seek what they want, and then they're responsible to make sure that they disperse it amongst their community. Same thing with the Hispanics, same thing with everything. The thing with black people is that they play the game, but they don't be doing right by the money and by the resources. How much money has been donated or given to these black organizations that did not hit us black people? There's no such thing that should be homelessness in America. So why would you need to force people into institutions? Why would you need to force people into mental places when you the one drove their butts crazy? And I know people hate to look at the truth. They hate to look at the realities of what goes on in our country. But you don't fix stuff by covering up stuff. And this is what the report said, y'all guys. This is what the news report said. This man was more worried about how other nations would view this nation when they come over here and see homeless encampments, more than he was worried about the actual homeless people. Like the old comedian Country Wayne would say, let that simmer in your spirit. See, a lot of stuff I agree with. I don't agree with abortions. I don't agree with too much murder on the land. When you're doing too much abortions, it brings curses up on the land. You got all this murder, murder, murder. So there's a lot of things I don't agree with. I do not agree with that. I felt like he was doing right. You know, making sure you keep the abortion, that all this kind of stuff. But people would say, well, why you not voting for him? And I'm gonna tell you why. I cannot vote for any institution, whether it's Democratic or Republican, when it's not making us better. It's making us bipolar, it's making us bipartisan, but it's not making us better. You don't solve homelessness by forcing people into institutions that you drove crazy. You don't solve homelessness by putting people on pills like they did all those black people when they had those doctors doing that to the black people like that. When they were staying at these shelters, everybody act like they forgot that. And the black people would say, you know what? We know what they doing, but we got to get us a play. We just going to play the game. We just going to play the game. We going to act like we taking the meds, and then we just, get our little apartments. But guess what would happen to the black people? They would tell them, we're going to check your blood. And if you're not adapting to the program or doing what we tell you to the program, then we're going to kick you off the program. So to the public, the program appears to look like, oh, they're helping these people. But behind closed doors, we know that that's not what was happening. So when I see things like that in the media, I must stand up. TCLN network I must stand up. And I must say, oh, so we're going to try to repeat this same pattern, but we're going to do it a slicker way. Nah, y'all. Nah. If all the lies you told us in this country that we know are lies and you profited from us, how about you, the government, start dispersing what's owed and due to us, which is American reparations? How can you teach people that God said give 10% of your money every 2 weeks, and the Bible does not teach that? And any scholar who would break down tithe would be able to tell you that. And that's why they tell you in churches, oh, these scholars, they don't have the anointing. They do have the anointing. They're anointed to break that information down. They anointed at what they do. Anointed at research. Anointed at facts. Anointed at breaking things down to say, hey, this is not the way it's supposed to go. And then everybody goes to church, jump up and down, hoop and holler, everybody in debt. You got to pay the government what you got to pay the government. If you don't, you go to jail, which is cool. But then you got to pay 10% on your income every 2 weeks. Now, for those who got a lot of money, that may not affect them. But for those who make less, it does affect them. And then they have to go get into debt to rob Peter to pay Paul, while people who don't do nothing right at all and lie, cheat, and steal really is robbing Peter to pay Paul. How dare this administration say something like that? How dare this administration think like that? And Democrats, you ain't different. Don't try to act like you different, because under your lead all these years, this was happening. Wasn't even no Republican in the House. You guys was there. So you're not different either. It was happening right up under your lead. When are we going to get it right in America, y'all? When are we going to get it right? Y'all know that song that says, if I'm crazy, you made me crazy. That girl wasn't playing when she created and produced that song. Whoever wrote it. She was singing it, but whoever wrote it, they wasn't playing. They wasn't playing, y'all. Sometimes artists will tell you the bona fide truth through a song. When is this country gonna stop playing black and white games, checker and chess, bipolar politics? Because it is bipolar. Let me show you how it's bipolar. You put a president up in there. He says, I'm gonna do A, B, C, D, E, F, G. They go in and put policies. You get another president up in there. They tear down those policies, say, I'm going to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And we're going to do it this way. Baby, is that not bipolar? How is you going to run a country like that? How is you going to keep the ship stable like that? The country is supposed to have a vision. And no matter what president gets up in there, the vote should be according to the vision. What do I mean by that? You know all this stuff y'all been talking about every year. I've been looking at this stuff since I've been a baby, man, with my grandmother looking at CNN. All this stuff on TV. Economics, jobs. Y'all been saying the same thing. The veterans, the homeless. Dude, that's been almost 40 something plus years. Do you understand that? When all you need in this country is a vision. What is the economics? Let's make a vision for it. What do we see and what do we want? And then whoever we vote for, they should be getting us there. What do we see from abortions? Do we want to be a land that keeps guising abortions as health care when it's nothing more than murder? Or do we want to change? And do we want to teach men and women how to deal with their bodies and how to be responsible? And I mean teaching them from a higher level. Not that low level stuff. Here go a condom. Here go a this. I mean really educating people on the power of who they are. Because you have nullified women down, making them think that their power is in taking their seed, when their power is in controlling their bodies and stop sexing around and stop getting pregnant and having power. The power to say, no, I'm not going to sleep with you because you, if I get pregnant, you don't want to raise a child. Or if I am going to sleep with you because I want to do the duty do, then it's my responsibility that my egg does not touch your seed and your sperm does not touch my egg, because we're not ready for that. Now, with that being said, you have a few accidental overdoses, right? Sometimes them little suckers say, y'all got us mixed up. We slipping through, baby. Woo, woo. But that's very rare compared to the world. Sometimes you do have medical forms of things where things are just so like rape and all that kind of stuff, right? And then somebody say, no, I just don't want this baby because I don't want that out of that. That's rare though. Everybody else just sleeping around and not taking responsibility. So do we want to be a country of murder? Or do we want to be a responsible country? When we gonna get it right, y'all? It's none of your business what I do with my body. It's not the taxpayers' business to pay for your abortions either. And neither to vote for them. We don't want blood on our hands when you don't want to be a responsible adult and do the right thing. When we gonna get it right? Donald Trump, if you ever come across this video, and I do mean ever, I want you to know two things. The number one thing is that you stole out of my mouth when I was saying that there should be a law against them touching young people. You understand what I'm saying? There should not be no sexual changes on young people. If young people are not allowed to smoke and drink at a certain age, then no doctor on the face of this earth should be able to touch them at a certain age and change their sexes. They're not ready for that yet. They haven't experienced enough of life. They've been under influence and they don't know who they are. Y'all steal things out of people's mouths so y'all can make yourselves look like heroes and sheroes. Because I'm the one who said it. You know, I'm the bee that they hate to love. And y'all love to steal stuff out of people's mouth. Go and make it seem like y'all all saying it. So that's the number one thing I would want you to know. The number two thing I would want you to know is Donald Trump. Remember, I want you to remember this, Donald Trump. In your book called Think Big and Kick A. Think Big and Kick A. You stated in your book, which was a big inspiration. I like that book. But you stated in your book that you was in New York and you was at that park, whatever that is, Central Park or whatever it is. And you said that you was in so much debt, that you looked over at the homeless person and you said that that person was in a better position than you were because of all the debt that you had accumulated through business deals and business. I want you to go back to what you remember. Not Project 2025, but remember the days of old. Remember the homeless vets. It's too much land in the United States of America. It's too many empty buildings that the government could have been done gave people money for. Little chop shop buildings, broken down stores, all kind of stuff y'all could have turned into for the homeless vets. If you see this up on the internet and it don't have that many views, but you looking at it out of people's mouth being said and on their recordings and on their hot shots and on their cast stuff, just know that they steal. Just know that they the same people who kept us down in homeless estates and wouldn't give us jobs and laughed and mocked at us, but would steal and parade themselves as a Green Bay tree. We didn't have a homeless problem. We had an injustice problem.
Never stop, I'll get it if I want it. Gotta make to myself a promise. I won't quit, keep going till I got it. I won't give up till I'm on top. Yeah.
We went to the EEOCs. They said, we know they doing it, but we can't help because for the simple fact, it doesn't fall up under this type of discrimination. But you can go see a lawyer. Then we went to the lawyers and the lawyers say, well, what you fail to realize is that a lot of these companies you think got money, they really don't have no money, honey. And we can't pursue them because it'll be a waste of our time. Not because we're greedy, but we have to labor with these cases. And also, sometimes we are tied up with businesses that we have partnerships with, and we just can't operate that way. Now, they ain't gonna say that up front, but they do tell you behind closed doors. Some of them lawyers are honest, and I would never oust them out because they're doing people justice by being honest. So Donald Trump, if you ever come by this, steal this out of my mouth. Do the right thing. Do the right thing. And that's not the right thing. Don't be worried about what other nations are thinking when they look at us and they see encampments. They got encampments too. The hell you talking about? They got all kind of stuff going on. Institutions, lockups, all that. Fix the problem. Be that president that makes history by not worrying about your image and how you look. Let's get it done. But you know, they always told us, and I don't know if it's true or not, so I'm going to go ahead and say allegedly, they said that y'all really don't make no choices. Y'all just the face. Prove them wrong. Make the choices. Do the right thing, as Spike Lee said. Hey there, I hope you enjoyed this week's broadcast, honey, because I want you to know, if you did, and it didn't hurt your ears, and it didn't hurt your heart, that means you got good ears and a good heart. That means that you really do want to see things move forward in this nation because you're not offended. So I would love for you to support me. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you get this video out. And if you can, support financially. God bless you.